Morning guys, Mac here. Now a colleague at work has just bought himself one of the new 16-inch MacBook Pros, and I was in the process of doing a list of apps that he should look at that will make his Mac OS life a little bit easier, and as I was doing it, it occurred to me I should video it because some of you might find it useful. So that's what this video is. So what I've done is I've put together a list of common apps that I use, and I'm not talking about major ones like Microsoft Office. I'm talking about those small ones that just make your desktop environment or your work environment a little bit easier to work in. I'd appreciate your feedback. If there's any apps you think I've missed that I should look at, let me know. If there's any you disagree with, of course, just let me know as well. So I've paid for all of these apps myself, all they're free. None of them are sponsored or anything like that. And I've put the links to most of them at the bottom in the description as well. I hope you find this useful.
So where to start? We have so many good little utilities that are worth looking at. So perhaps let's start with working out what Mac this actually is. So as you can see, this is a 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro. It's got the 2.3 gigahertz 8-core i9 in it and 32 gig of RAM. And I think this one has 1 terabyte of storage. Yeah, there we go. The first app I would strongly recommend you get installed is something called HyperDock. Now, the reason I've chosen this first is because I suspect it's the one that I'll get most of the comments saying, you're just trying to simulate what you can do with Windows. And you are in some respects. So let me show you what it actually does. So imagine the scenario. We've got Word open here. Okay, we've only got one copy of a document open. That's absolutely fine. And that's really easy. Now, imagine if we had 2 or 3 documents open. So I've opened quite a few there. Now what we can do is if we hover over the actual application icon there, you'll see that I can go through and select whichever one that I want to work on. So that just restores some functionality. It's very similar to what you get on Windows 10. There are some other things as well because you can actually do some of the things around window behavior as well. So for example, I've got mine set so I can use command and arrows to actually reset where my windows are stored. So if I wanted that on the left, I could command arrow and left. If I wanted that one full screen, I could command and up. Now again, that's very similar to some of the functionality you get on Windows, and that's why I'm expecting some comments about that. So if we have a look at the configuration of HyperDock, you'll see all the stuff in here. So you can control its appearance, you can control even things around Windows management, what keys you use, all that sort of good stuff. It's a great little app, and it's probably one of the first things I always install when I'm setting up a new Mac. So what next? Well, my next favorite little app is something called Browserosaurs. So let me show you it in here. There you go, Browserosaurs. Now what does this do? Let me show you. So let's imagine, for example, we've got a HTTP link or HTTPS link. So this one here, for example, goes to my gallery. What this little app does is it enables me to choose which browser I want to open links in. So let me show you. I'm going to click on that link and I'll be asked whether I want to open it in Google Chrome or in Safari. Now the reason I find that so useful is that I'm often logged into multiple Office 365 tenancies, for example. So being able to open links in different browsers enables me to work with different tenancies, that sort of stuff. So great little app, that really useful. I use it all the time. Okay, totally running through these now. What's next? Well, the next one I'd recommend is something called Bartender 3, I think the current version. So to understand what this does, have a look at my toolbar up here. You can see I've got absolutely tons of stuff installed. I've got Dropbox, there's my Adobe stuff, there's OneDrive, there's Alfred, there's all kinds of stuff installed. And you just end up with absolutely loads of things on your toolbar. Now what Bartender does is it actually tidies up your toolbar. I don't know if you can see there, but as soon as I launched it, lots of those icons disappeared. So only the ones that I actively want to be able to see at any one time are actually shown here. So what's happened to all the others? Well, if you see those 3 dots in the corner, if I hit that, that's where all the other icons are. Now they tend to be ones that I don't work with very often. So for example, this is my screen share and all kinds of stuff. So it's a really useful little app that just for tidying up your toolbar up at the top there. So this next one is a particular favourite of mine. It's something called Unclutter. Now, if you're like me, you end up with the odd file stuffed on your desktop. You want to make notes. I end up putting notes in TextEdit and all kinds of stuff. Well, what Unclutter does is it gives you a work area for dumping things. So if I move up to the top of the screen here and just scroll down, you will see that I've got a clipboard history. So you can see everything that I've put to the clipboard. I'm hoping there's nothing too embarrassing in there. No, there isn't. you can see, you know, I can drop files in here and I can even write small notes. So there'll be several notes in there. This is a really useful app. You can also put all those files and everything into a Dropbox folder so it will come across to your other Apple devices or other Windows devices. Very, very useful bit of software that, and I use it a lot. It's quite customizable. I mean, like I say, I've got mine set up, so I go to the top of the screen and just drag down. Now, one of the ones I get asked about quite a lot is iStat menus, and the reason is people spot it in my videos in the toolbar up here. So what you'll see, for example, is I have something in my toolbar which displays my CPU usage, temperatures, what apps are running, what my memory load is, all kinds of stuff. You'll see there, for example, my current memory utilization. You'll see there my SSD, and this is all driven from an app called iStat Menus. It's very, very powerful. It gives you a great snapshot of what your machine's up to at any one time. Is it essential? No, of course it isn't. But, you know, if you're a techie, it's useful to be able to see what your machine is up to. Well, we're motoring on through them now. So what else? Well, let's have a look at something called DropZone, which is that one there, I think. So what DropZone is, it's a collection of actions that you can do to files. So you pick the file up and drop it on DropZone, and it will do certain actions for you. So, for example, I've got certain folders set up in here, like downloads and software. I can download YouTube videos. I've got my AirDrop. I can print, and I can also set desktop pictures. So these are all actions that I can do with files. So let me give you an example. If I've got my desktop wallpapers folder here, let's pick up a desktop wallpaper. Well, I've got a file here. I can drag it to my DropZone, drop it on desktop picture, and it goes off and changes my desktop picture. If I wanted, for example, to drop some files into another folder or predefined folders, let's say, for example, that one, I can do exactly the same. I can select the drop zone and decide where I want to leave it. Now, I'm just going to drop that in software. Now, this Mac is relatively new, so I haven't configured that properly yet, but basically what I'd normally have in there is, you know, kind of certain locations on my NAS, like backup locations, all that kind of good stuff, and it works really, really well, so it's highly recommended from me. Moving on, let's look at something called Amphetamine. Now that's that one up in my toolbar here. What this enables you to do is to keep your Mac awake and stop it going to sleep. So if you have a quick look in here, you'll see there's various options. We can keep it awake indefinitely. We can set time limits. So if you've got, for example, large tasks running or, you know, downloads running, you don't want those things to get interrupted, or, you know, you want to reference the Mac from another machine and you want to make sure it's awake, Amphetamine's a great way to do it. So another great app that I find really useful is something called DaisyDisk. Let's have a look at this. Now, what DaisyDisk does is it analyzes your storage usage and gives you some indication as to what's taking up all that space. So let's just run a quick scan on my drive. There you go, and it gives you a map. So you can see, for example, in my users, that's where the majority of my data is, and I'm sure it will be in there that most of my data is. Let's have a look. So you can see, for example, I've got loads of virtual machine storage in here. Now, if you wanted to delete stuff, I absolutely could. I could pick it up and just drag it onto this delete thing down here, and then we could hit delete. I'm not going to delete stuff, but it's a great app for being able to see what's taking up all your storage, and it's well worth the money. So the next one I want to talk about is something called Parallels Desktop, which is this one here. Now this is the one that seems to get most of the comments because I think people are a little bit surprised about what you can actually do with the Mac. So what this is a desktop virtualization environment, a bit like VMware Workstation, which allows you to run different operating systems virtually on the Mac. If you look here, you can see I've got a Skype for Business environment set up. I've also got a Windows 10 machine down here. So let's get the Windows 10 machine fired up and you can see what the performance is like. There we go. So let's get logged in. Bruce Wayne demo user. There we go. Now once we're in there, you can do anything you do on a normal Windows machine. There's our Explorer. We can always fire up Excel and Word and all that good stuff. Now this is something I use constantly. Now the other thing is I've got this set up in a window. You can of course run it in full screen as well, which is like that, in which case it's just as good as any other Windows machine. The benefit of this is, of course, I can just swipe across and get my Mac environment as well. But there is one other cool little thing that I'll show you. I'm just going to change the view, pop into exit out of full screen, and I'm going to select something called Coherence. Now what Coherence does is it allows us to run our Windows apps alongside our Mac ones. So as you can see, I've got my Excel there in Windows. I've also got my Explorer, and of course I can also run my Mac Finder over the top as well. So it is actually pretty impressive. So let me drop out of that. Now, of course, you can run several other things in here as well. Now, there is another app called VMware Fusion, which I don't think is on this one, which does a very similar thing. The only thing is, I'd say that VMware Fusion, I don't find it as fast or as responsive as Parallels. The upside to Fusion, though, is you can run it on multiple Macs for one license. You can't do that with Parallels. If you've got more than one Mac, you'll need multiple subscriptions to Parallels. The thing I do tend to get asked about a lot is, why is my dock on the left hand side of the screen? Well, there's a simple reason for it, and that is the fact that with laptops you tend to struggle for vertical screen estate rather than horizontal. So by me having the dock on the left rather than the bottom, I find it just gives me a little bit more room when I'm working on productivity type apps like Word or Excel or stuff like that. So if you can see, for example, I've got full screen Excel spreadsheet there. I'm not losing vertical space to that dock. Now, some people configure the dock to be auto-hiding. That's another option. I much prefer the dock to be visible to me. I just find that so much simpler.
So I told you there were quite a few nice little apps in there, didn't I? A lot of them are things that I've used constantly for quite a while and I find really useful. So like I said earlier, any feedback, stick it in the comments and I'll do my best to get back to you. Thanks guys and have a good Christmas.